Hello everyone, and welcome to a new Let's Play of Ninja Gaiden for the Nintendo. This is a really hard game, but also a really fun one. So I'm going to do my absolute best to show you the clues that you can use to beat this, even if your reflexes aren't that good. We have a frame counter up there, so you know that we're doing this on emulator. And we're also going to have button inputs on the upper left corner so you can see exactly which buttons I'm pressing at which time. Like, it's a lot easier to use visual examples, I find. And joining me for this journey is Skyzo. How you doing?
Hello YouTube, I'm doing well.
Yeah. And here's one of the most famous aspects of Ninja Gaiden. It's innovative cutscenes. Didn't see stuff like this on the Nintendo console that often.
Innovative.
Innovative. Innovative.
Yeah, wouldn't you say innovative? That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, sorry about that. Also, this game is actually supposed to be called, something much more complicated, like Ninja Gaiden Ryukenden, or something like that, Legend of the Dragon Sword. I don't know why they used Gaiden, other than it was a fancy-sounding Japanese word, but Japanese title made more sense. Now, here I'm going to show the difference between a regular slash and a jumping slash. Now, notice how I hold left and mash A, and yet he keeps stopping in place. That is a weakness of the attack command. So, when you're really good at the game, you want to do jumping slashes to kill enemies, that way you don't stop. You want to use plenty of pause buffering if you're new to this, so that, because enemies just come so fast you barely have time to react. And also that power-up that we got in that orange thing, that's what we call Ninpo, ninja magic, basically, for when we get sub-weapons from one of these containers.
Okay, I got that. And it looks like the enemies just respawn infinitely.
They can. Also, here's damage boosting. So when you get hit by an enemy, Ryu flies up and to the direction that makes the most sense. And that's what I call the spinning buzzsaw. The most broken thing ever. Never leave home without it. And here's the respawn loop that we talked about. Also, what I'm demonstrating here is that when you jump and you press attack, you do the spinning slash, and that costs 5 Ninpo. But if you hold down while you jump and slash, you do a regular one. It's what we call sword canceling, and it has another application to where you attack super duper fast in the air, much faster than normal. But for most of this playthrough, we're going to be using slash canceling in order to conserve Ninpo, because that spinning slash is the most broken thing ever. But it costs Ninpo unless you do sword canceling. And that's an hourglass, by the way. It does what you think it does. But, yeah, damage boosting is sort of another advanced trick. Normally it's only useful in speed scenarios, but for some occasional moments like what you saw before, it can be useful. Any questions, Skyzo?
I guess what happens when you run out of time?
You die.
It's just an automatic death.
Yep. Here's the boss!
Wow, that was pretty fast.
I told you it was broken. Now, some people might be a little bored if we just did Weenie Hut strats, so I'm also going to include fast versions of each of the stages we do. This was not done with my own skill, mind. This was done with plenty of save states, but I copied off what I saw from speedrun videos done by actual speedrunners, so it's not really cheating, just for demonstration purposes.
Right, so I think that on the spinning attack, you just do damage every frame, and that's why it's broken, right?
Yep. Also, I'm going to demonstrate what the bosses are like without that broken technique. Most of them still aren't very hard, but I want to at least give them a chance. What was that, Skyzo?
Not really anything. I didn't say anything.
Oh, okay. But yeah, the button inputs will be up in the upper left, and they'll be the same color, purplish color as the Ninpo, so hopefully that'll be easy for you guys to see.
So who is the girl character?
We don't know her name till the very end.
Right. So, but like, what role does she play in the story?
She's the one you have to rescue.
Okay, so yeah, kind of like Mario and the princess, whatever.
Yeah, that's essentially what she's reduced to for most of the Nintendo series.
Well, it's fine if a game is more about the gameplay.
Yeah.
That is the final boss, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It always struck me as weird, this introduction. Like, she tranks him, puts him in a jail, gives him a statue, and then tells him to run away. I feel like there's a step in there that really doesn't need to be there. What do you think?
Well, I figure it's like, it's supposed to build suspense, like it's supposed to make you think there's something else going on.
Yeah. Also, this situation, I know that the fast guy can't get on the decks, and the orange guy has projectiles, so I used pause buffering to process through which guy should I attack first. You'll run into a lot of situations like that, where there's just too much for your brain to process.
Right, so you basically need pause buffering to handle this many enemies, because I always found it strange how in some of these games you just have waves of enemies, like all at once, and like how you're supposed to react to that.
Practice. Lots of practice. Also, this is a deathless playthrough, but I want to show you the benefits of it. This game is actually pretty generous for the time. It checkpoints every time you get to a new screen. So oftentimes, if you get to another one and you're all beaten up and at 1 HP, it's oftentimes more economical to just take the death so that you walk into it with newly restored life and all that. You'll even lose all your Ninpo, you just lose half of it. But we're not taking advantage of that, but it's something you could do if you're just starting the game. And I should also note that the thing that really makes Ninja Gaiden hard is the platforming. The enemies are actually pretty weak. Most of them only do 1 unit of health, and you have 16 health. Like, at the most, they might do 3, some might. But all in all, most of your deaths are gonna come from the platforming when someone like knocks you into a bottomless pit. So keep that in mind as you're traversing through this. It's also why we're trying so hard to make sure we have the spinning death saw, because if we pick up another sub-weapon like that, our buzzsaw gets replaced. And you tend to only get one of them per stage. You gotta be careful about that.
Yeah, so I think Castlevania did something similar, that they had those bad enemies that knocked you off bridges.
Yeah. And this here is what we call a Hammer Brothers situation. That guy does things in sort of unpredictable arcs, and he's also over a bottomless abyss. So that's one of the prime examples where you just break out the buzzsaw. You want to conserve it as best you can, but sometimes you can't help it. Just like this guy with the machine gun.
Yeah, so the enemy placement here, as you said, really emphasizes that these enemies, like, the real hazard is losing all your health at once for falling in a pit.
Indeed. And once you kind of figure that out, the game becomes a lot more manageable, I think. as well as how to beat up the final bosses, because they're infamous for sending you all the way back to the start of Act 6, but honestly, they're really not that hard, once you figure out the tricks to them. And yes, I'm even referring to the Jakio when I say that. Ninja Gaiden fans will know the Jakio fight and dread it, but I know how to beat it easily, without any skill.
Well, generally when you know what to expect, it's always an easier time.
I know, but like, seriously, it's a good strat, and I think it's one I cooked up myself.
Also, what is up with these enemies, by the way? Like, you have those goblins, you have like people from like, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, like with swords and whatnot, and you have guns, and then you have bugs. Like, what the hell is going on?
Well, I have no clue. Honestly, I'm more weirded out by the charging football men myself.
Those are football men? I thought those were ninjas.
They look like football guys to me. Like, I just looked at them and thought, running quarterbacks.
Yeah, now that you mention it, they kind of do remind me of those enemies in Super Mario World, where you have them charge at you.
Yeah. Again, try not to get freaked out if there's a lot of guys. The enemies don't hurt you very much anyway. So keep your cool. Also, we are running a little low on the timer, so I am going to be going a little faster for this last portion. I wasn't too freaked out, because I know the game, but still. Anyways, here's the next boss.
Looks like a biker.
Alright, you ready to see it fast?
Sure.
Now, one of the things that to keep in mind when you're watching these super playthroughs is that they are so much harder than they look. Like, so much harder. Like, there's all these moments where if you jump even a little bit too early or too late, a damage boost won't work, or you'll miss an enemy, or you don't slash them on the way down. It's so complex. Like, it made me appreciate the speedrunners all the more. And there's this wall trick to where, like, it's this almost frame-perfect thing where you, like, jump to the left, then hold the right button again while holding up, and then Ryu climbs a little bit right before you jump left again, and then hold right. And that, like, saves a few frames if you do it perfectly. And there's stuff like the swag star here. It's just insane.
Right, so I was gonna mention that there's a game similar to this called Ghosts and Goblins that's very difficult. It reminds me a lot of this.
I can see the parallels. Also, I didn't mention it before, but that potion we got, most of them only give points to your score meter, making them useless, but the more oddly colored ones with all the black dots on them, those actually refill your health. 6 units, in fact. They're a rare but very valuable commodity in this game.
Also, how we mentioned Hammer Brothers in the original Mario games, they're so difficult to deal with. Like, I'm reminded of the Lost Levels, which is like a game that the US never saw the release of. And in those games, if you wait long enough, they just run at you. It's very difficult to avoid them. Just one of the worst enemies, I swear.
I know that feeling. I've played the Lost Levels, actually.
Yeah, that game is like pretty much the hardest game that Nintendo has put out, I think.
Personally, I liked it for the most part. The only parts that galled me were the parts where, like, you had to choose Luigi to get over a certain platforming section, and I had, like, no way of knowing what to expect in advance.
You actually don't need Luigi at all. You can make all the jumps. Like, Luigi is just there to help you. Surprising.
Really? I could have sworn there were a few instances where I needed Luigi's jumping power.
Well, Luigi can only jump one block higher than Mario, and he's... like, the trade-off is that he's very floaty, and to be honest, it's not worth it. Because it can lose so much control that you just fall off everything.
Ken and Ryu. Get it? Ken is Ryu's father.
Is that like a reference to something?
Aw, you haven't played Street Fighter?
No, I haven't. I don't play fighting games.
Okay, well, the two most iconic flagship characters in the Street Fighter series are Ryu and Ken.
Right, fair enough.
So, probably an intentional reference. Now, whether it was in the Japanese script or also in the... or only in the English localization, who knows? Another thing I'm curious about is whether or not Shinobi, in all caps here, was like a stand-in for God or something like that, as some games are in the habit of doing. I meant to look that up before doing this episode, but I forgot to. I'll put the answer in an annotation or something.
What do you mean by that?
Well, sometimes in these old games where God was a character, they'll censor his name by having some other random name instead, like Sorrow or the Maker. And Shinobi just being in all caps like that made me wonder if that was the case here.
I thought that was a mistranslation, actually.
I'll tell you the answer. Alrighty then, that's all for this episode. Have a nice day and God bless y'all.
See you, YouTube.